Okay, everybody, this is a short follow-up to the Trump and the astrology of Mars, because of the tweet that Trump sent on Tuesday, April 7th. Whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Revolutionarily wonderful. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. He's blessing them as he decides to bomb them himself. Okay, so that tweet was or was Truth Social post was posted at 8:10 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And the first thing that I want to bring to our attention is, well, first of all, let's go back to this motherfucker's chart. Is he here? He's not. Yeah, there he is. One second. The first thing that I want to bring attention to is the fact of this Mars. Remember, we talked about it. We talked about this Mars before. The whole video was about that. Um, the fact that it's on the ascendant, that it's within degrees of Regulus, and if I keep remembering, or I keep remembering that Regulus is rise and fall. Regulus is rise and fall. The other thing I want to bring to our attention is the moon, the sun moon opposition. It's a full moon chart, and the sun is with Ketu. I mean, sorry, sun is with Rahu, and the moon is with Ketu. But once again, we've been talking so much about this Mars, and the Mars is what's going on. So I want to come back to the chart of the 10th or of the 8th or the 7th. What was it? The 7th? Yeah, whole civilization. The 7th, because the 7th, look at where the moon is. The moon is at 18 degrees of Sagittarius within 3 degrees of the natal moon. So basically, this is his natal lunar return happening. This is his natal lunar return happening. So usually, one of the interesting things that most people talk about is that when they use the lunar return chart, or one of the things Robert Zoller would talk about was that he preferred to use lunar returns based on the solar return, not on the natal chart. But I have an interesting theory about this. I have a theory that because Donald Trump is decompensating and probably going into maybe middle stages, approaching middle stages of dementia, where now it's really, really unavoidable to recognize and to notice, especially within the understanding of impulse control. And that's a Mars thing. That's a Mars and a moon thing, right? Because we talk about Mars being impulsive and acting. Mars is action, so Mars is impulsive. Let's get back to his chart here for a second. Okay, so Mars is impulsive and doesn't think before it acts, right? Mars is action. And so one of the things, especially when you see Mars in the second, is you almost always get a sense of, oh, that person can't control their spending. They've got habits with impulse spending because Mars is action. It's not taking everything into consideration before action. Mars just will go. So, with that in mind, this idea of impulse control is one of the main reasons, or one of the main ways in which, and of course, also, okay, since we have this chart, note that the Mars is connected to the Sun. Matter of fact, this is the main applying aspect. I don't know if we've talked about before the. Well, I know I've talked about it. The signature in the chart, or that's something that another Rob Zoller thing, where Rob Zoller believed that the signature in the chart was the closest applying aspect among the seven planets. So not to Pluto or blah 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 or anything like that, but the closest applying aspect between seven planets kind of took over as the main, as kind of the main mode of expression, or one of the main ways in which the person will show themselves, and or will kind of, like, once again, kind of a signature of how they go about things. And note here that this Mars that I've been spending so much time talking about is connected to the sun, right? And so the sun is applying to Mars. The sun is in reception. There is a reception with Mars because planet A, the sun, is applying to planet B, Mars, who is in the sign of planet A, the sun. So Mars is in Leo. So this is one of the classic receptions. This is one of the signs of classic reception, which makes this a very, very useful and a very, very useful sextile. And one of the ways that it makes it useful, or not useful, but one of the ways in which it's working, in my opinion, because of, once again, if we're talking about Mars and the lack of impulse control, right? If we're talking, is speech, right? Because the sun is in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, and this motherfucker can't shut up. He can't shut up. He can't stop writing, reading, writing, arithmetic, none of these things he's good at. Look at Mercury's in Cancer, which is, he's totally peregrine. He's totally peregrine in the sign, and, and mute, right? But unfortunately, that's not what's going on in this particular chart, because this motherfucker literally doesn't ever shut up. And so I think that part of the problem with the impulse control is also a problem with the impulse control is manifesting through speech and inability to kind of, what's the word that they keep talking about, inability to use a filter with the speech. That's one of the main ways in which this person is kind of decompensating, in my opinion, saying all kinds of inappropriate things, flying off the handle, but then also all of the emotional. So coming back to the other chart here, this whole civilization, the other part of impulse control is the I guess, shall we say, the storehouse of impulses themselves, which is the moon, right? Which is the moon. And so what we end up having is we've got the moon as being kind of affected by this whole thing, right? And then we've got the moon being affected because it's coming back to its position. And I think because of the dementia, we should be looking at lunar returns for Trump, to any time that the moon comes back to late degrees of Sagittarius, his own, what I think it's, what, 2113, I think is what, is where it is. And if you will notice here, the moon's next application at the time that he did it was the square to Mercury, right? So that was the next application. And of course, what did he do? He wrote something out. But Mercury is also applying to the conjunction of Mars. Now, Mercury doesn't get close enough to him because he was recently retrograde and just went stationary, so he's going quite slowly. But Mercury is now in application to Mars. It's wide. Excuse me. That ends up giving Mercury a Martian hue. And that also means that the last aspect that the moon would be making today, or while she's in Sagittarius, while she remains in Sagittarius before she leaves the sign, the very last aspect she would be making is to Mars himself. And so we've got this imminent moon Mars square. Like I said, it started when the moon Mercury square was already taking place, but it's really started with this imminent moon Mars square. And so one of the or it's kind of, I think that's kind of what was being felt out. And so one of the things that I was thinking about, or when I read it, everybody is panicking, and the chaos, and the people's emotions are running so high, and people are talking about nuclear war, and of course the media is fanning the flames. And there's so much to me about kind of how we have been kind of, shall I say, conditioned. Our amygdalas have been conditioned into going into extreme reactions, and then the media itself immediately goes to the most sensationalistic, the most insightful, and not always the least possible. It just goes, like, for instance, the whole this what was the thing that created the 25th Amendment, 25th Amendment, 25th Amendment. That's what they kept saying over and over again, 25th Amendment, which of course is harder than impeachment, right? Because you've got to get the entire cabinet on board, and then you also have to get 60%. You've got to get a 60% quorum for both houses. So it could easily fail, whereas impeachment is easy. But it's interesting how the media went directly to that, and people went directly to it. 25th Amendment, but it was really because of the decompensating that they were seeing and how alarming the decompensation is really showing up. The last thing that I want to say, which I don't know if I said at the beginning, but I think I did, this happened on a Tuesday. Tuesday is the day of Mars, Marte D. This happened on a Tuesday, Martes. This happened on a Tuesday. It happened on a Tuesday when the moon's last application is going to be to Mars. It happened to a person who whose oh, that's the solar. Oh, I wanted to talk about the solar ingress too. It happened to a person who has Mars on the ascendant, and who we know from the other things that we've talked about with him, and the Lord of the Victor is Mars. Everything, almost many of these important things we've talked about the three assistants and how there was really only two assistants in the chart, and it's really the Sun and Mars. So when it really comes down to this chart, when it really comes down to this person, um, uh, it's kind of a crazy thing, right? It's kind of a crazy thing what we're kind of dealing with. This is back to the solar ingress, and it really there's not that much of a thing that's going on with it. But note that now natally, Trump's Sun Moon opposition is in the first and seventh house. Of course, the seventh is the house of your enemy, right? The seventh is the house of the enemy. Or the, the open enemy. So and the seventh is also often generally a house of war. So there could be some of that going on too. And the Mars has now moved to where, what is that? Not the spirit, but the previous new moon. So it's moved to where the previous new moon was for the solar ingress. Which is kind of interesting. But aside from that, there's nothing really that kind of points to the solar ingress that we were dealing with. Really, what happens, or what is happening, is we've got the moon and Mars. The moon and Mars creating a T square with this opposition. They're basically they're activating the opposition, right? The moon would be here, the Mars would be somewhere there. Note the Mars would be in the eighth, 28 degrees. That's the exact degree of the Mars, or you right. So it's in the 29th degree. That's the exact degree of the Mars at the time of the tweet. So the eighth house, and what's he doing? He's threatening death and destruction. Now, mind you, so note that. So as a result, this Mercury Moon thing gets affected, and then of course, if that gets affected, then so does this. So does Mars, right? Because the moon's next application is to the sun. The sun's next application is to Mars, but the moon is faster, right? So it'll go from the sun and then translate the sun to Mars. So Mars is involved with both of these planets, and now with this T square that with the moon returning and the T square that the Mars has created, it ends up affecting this entire system. And so I think we're going to see more things like this, especially once again, when the moon comes to its natal position. Now, mind you, he has not had his birthday yet, right? His birthday is June 14th. Of course, we could be looking at the lunar position for the solar return for 2025, 2026. But I just found it really interesting and this was such a huge event. I mean, it was just such a huge thing. Nothing else that I think I can see that actually connects anything else. Isn't it so interesting that it happened during a Venus, when Venus was the chart ruler, and Venus is in her own sign. So when this came out, and there was all this panic, and there was all this fear, and there was all this speculation about 25th Amendment, or about nuclear war, or the end of a civilization, whatever the fuck. I looked at this and I looked at the time of the chart and I thought, is it possible? Is all of this stuff that they're talking about possible? And I'll tell you that I decided no. At the time, it was about maybe 10 o'clock. I think maybe I did a chart for nine something and then realized that I didn't know what time the actual tweet happened or the actual, Truth Social post happened. So I went back and looked at it and I thought, well, wait, I don't think that there's going to be anything of the kind. I think this is all just words because I know now why I wanted to go back to the solar revolution chart, and I will go back to that in a second. That it was just words, and here's the reason why: both the moon and Mars are in they even though Mars is very well placed here at the very end. Oh wait, no, at this point I think he's no longer the term ruler, but Mars has, I think, between the 21st and the 27th degree of Pisces as his term, and then the from the last face of Pisces is his face, and obviously he's one of the triplicity rulers of this sign as well. So in some of these late degrees, Mars can actually be the Almuten or Almubtaz in Pisces, especially at night, right? So in some of these, I think up to 27, Mars can be the Almubtaz. After that, then Saturn gets the term. So Mars is pretty well situated, but not as well situated as obviously Jupiter. So Jupiter is in the fall of Mars, right? So there's all this. What he was doing was super fanciful. I mean, he was nuclear wars is about as expansive as you can get when it comes to war, right? It can do the most damage. It can cover the most territory, right? So there's and it can, shall we say, events or invoke the most power. Look at how the sun just left the square of Jupiter. The exalted sun just separated from the square of Jupiter. It's at 17 in the 18th degree of Aries. Jupiter is in the 17th degree of Cancer. So that's power. That's the expanse of power. That's the enlargement, the largesse. That's power and largesse, right? And in this particular case, this power and largesse is being used in a negative way. He's using this largesse of power to say, I can annihilate you. That's pure Mars, right? So, but that's also got a really Jupiterian sense. And so here we can see how the Jupiter ruled Mars is showing itself. Yes. But when I saw that Jupiter was in Cancer, I thought he's bluffing because Jupiter won't sustain it. If Mars is in Pisces, Mars is in Jupiter's sign. If Mars were in Aries, I would have been a lot more worried. If let's say the moon were in at 19th degree of Sagittarius, and oh God, give me a second here. Warm weather is coming, and so my allergies are affected. Anyway, I looked at this Jupiter and I thought, no way, no way. Mars is also, remember, Pisces has to do with fantasy and unreality, right? I thought, no way. There is no way that this is going to work with Trump. There's no way that this is going to work. So I wanted to go back to the original tweet, or not to the tweet. I wanted to go back to the solar revolution. And I wanted to bring up something that, because what's happening, because remember, we did all this stuff about figuring out who's who, right? Who's the king? Who's the common people? Who's the Lord of the Year? Who are women? Who are the fat cats? Who, right? And it led us away from the ruler of the ascendant, the Mercury, who at that time was stationary direct and was stationary and about to go direct. However, note, remember when I talk about Mercury Mars, it's chicanery, it's roguishness, it's the highwayman, it's robbery, it's lying, it's oh shit, what's the word? It's harsh speech, but it's Con, it's conning, it's crime. It's crime. It's conning. It's lying. It's deception. It's harsh speech. Once again, back to it's belligerence. It's belligerence through speech because Mercury rules the tongue. And note here also, Mercury ruled sign, right? And note here, this Mercury Mars. This is an expression of the Mercury Mars. What we just experienced with what we experienced not just with this, but also with the Easter Day tweet. The Easter Day tweet. Think about that, and think about that within the context of Mars as the medieval significator for religious dissent. For religious dissent. And if we go back to this motherfucker's chart, Mars rules what? The fourth and the ninth house. I saw a fantastic video. A woman named Rev Carter or something like that. She was I think she was Episcopalian Reverend, and then she left, or Presbyterian or something, and she left, and she's kind of like agnostic, atheistic now. But she made a fantastic video about Rev Carla, Carla with a K. And she made a fantastic video where the very first thing she said is Donald Trump is jealous of Jesus. And she noticed that she made a point that on all of the high holy days, Donald Trump does something, says something, whatever, to supplant himself in the position of what would be worshipped. She talks about Christmas, how the whole Christmas thing, the Nigeria bombings that happened on Christmas, and how he used that to kind of continuously post throughout the day, and to more and more inflammatory. There's Leo flames, Mars hot and dry. This is the fire. This is fire, hot and dry, cholera, fire, fire, fire. So, and the fact that Mars rules the ninth. Mars rules the ninth house. Now, and remember we talked about that when Iran started. So that's when I made my original video when the Iran video started, and I started seeing the extent to which all of this religious symbolism was getting folded into it, and how that's Mars as fuck, and that's Mars Leo as fuck. That's Mars Leo Regulus as fuck, right? Because we know that he's been bringing in the Christian nationalist element. However, now there's an even shall we say an even a layer that's even more subtle, which is of him trying, because he's already being given kind of a permission, a messianic permission from evangelicals and the prosperity gospel people, right? So now it looks like he's actually taken that to heart. He's going into some kind of messianic dementia related delusion, it looks like, and he's using. I mean, he didn't say anything about Happy Easter, didn't say anything about Our Lord is risen, the cross. He said, what did he say? Praise be to Allah. Praise Allah. He said, praise Allah on Easter. So all of this lack of impulse control, all of this, and once again, the moon is where the impulses are. The moon is our reflexes. It's our reflexes and our reactions to what is going on around us, to all stimulus. Right? And already from this natal chart, we see that the reaction to stimulus is actually plugged into this signature of the chart, which is the Sun Mars sextile. Which means, and once again, because he's decompensating, he's going into a state of lunacy, lunar, right? The word lunar and lunacy, right? He's going into a lunar state. He's going into a kind of an untrammeled, a feral lunar state. And because he's doing that, I think that we need to be watching him every month, especially around this time. Of course, if he makes it throughout. But yeah, so I've been wanting to say something about this, but I could see like time just kind of slipping away until it became less and less relevant. But it's relevant now, and I think it's something that we should be thinking about and looking at.